Okay.
Good morning to you. You arrived to this piece of video either in your YouTube or through the website of the Fifth Way, or maybe it has been transferred elsewhere. Today is the 16th of April 1909, no, not 1909, 2009. My name is Gabriel Raam. I'm a self-professed thinker and philosopher, and a teacher of body language. I live in Israel, and in the footsteps of the Fourth Way, I instigated a way for development and awakening consciousness, which is called Fifth Way. And with me, my very loyal and very good pupil and partner, Danny. And we are holding a series of questions about various subjects in the attempt to give those subjects a consciousness viewpoint. The base assumption is that after development and work on oneself, there is a level in oneself which is called the consciousness level, from which things look different. That what I would say so far about the consciousness view, and I think it's time to see what the consciousness view says about things that we meet day to day. I would say just one thing before I begin. There is a difference, and I think I mentioned it before, between a view and an opinion. View is the right word, because opinion basically is not a view, and it's not to do with the way someone perceives anything, but it's to do with biased emotional subjectivity which dictates the mind a certain way to look at things. So if a person has got a certain emotional diversity, it will dictate an opinion. And because people have got a lot of emotional diversities, they've got a lot of opinions. Now, opinions is the weeds of views. Views are the rare flowers that can grow in the absence of opinions. And often, because of the thick growth of opinions, views can't grow.
Okay, so I have a question about, I think it's, in English it's vaccination.
Vaccination, yes?
Vaccination. Well, I thought about a lot of ways to approach this question, but I finally chose that some women today, nowadays, choose not to vaccinate their children.
Some mothers.
Some mothers, not to vaccinate their children, and they saying that denying a childhood disease from a child actually brings him damage.
Denying a disease from the child brings him damage.
Yes.
How do they explain this?
It is that child disease is a good thing. And
right. So anything which is natural is good, even a disease. And a vaccination being not natural is not good. Or you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think it is against all...
Alright, so formulate your question, please.
Well, how do you explain? Because it seems to me that the mother's viewpoint is to make her child be as strong and giving him vaccination is making him safe from a lot of harms.
I don't think that I should explain the mother's approach. I think I should explain what is my approach towards vaccination.
Yes.
And whether the view corresponds with the view of the mother, not to explain.
Okay.
I think I understand
But,
what they do, and I think I explained it just a moment ago.
but first of all, I think it's a phenomenon. It didn't, I think, exist all the time, I think.
Yeah, but it's not an isolated phenomenon. It's to do with a certain view that natural is good.
Yes.
And I think in the same bracket as vaccination is bad, you can have medicine, chemicals
Yes.
is bad, antibiotics is bad. I suppose if I need to get into the mind of, I didn't research the subject of the mothers, then they may say that there is the immune system which is supposed to combat with the disease, and if you give a vaccination, it makes the immune system weaker.
Yes.
I'm not so sure. I mean, what I read, this is exactly what the vaccination is doing. You give
Yes.
a weakened dose of the illness to make the immune system. But I'm not very well versed with the medical aspect, so I won't relate to it. But for me, the whole phenomena is basically not a phenomenon which is to do with vaccination. But it's to do with, many people, which is much more common, when they have a headache, they say, I don't want to take a headache pill. And
Yes.
they actually brag about it.
Yes.
And they say, I suffered a headache and I don't take the pill, and,
Yes.
And it's good. And also you can look at it as an objection to chemicals wherever they are. You don't eat chickens because they have these injections
Yes.
in them. So I think the question is, and tell me if you agree with me, is not a question about vaccination, but the whole question of, is it important to be natural in every cost, and should we object to chemicals being put in us and allow the body and the system to overcome things naturally?
Yes.
I think that's the question.
That's totally it, I think.
Well, I think that first of all, we are not natural. We can't talk about being natural. There's no way we could be natural. And in fact, if someone is wishing to be natural, he's actually going against himself.
Okay.
Now, why is that? We live in an unnatural environment, period. We are out of anything natural. We don't step on the ground. We have, I don't know how you say, asphalt in English. You have concrete on which you step, so you're separated from the ground. Thousands and millions of things why we're not natural. Even if I speak about the fact that as we sit here now, all the wavelengths of the police cars and the taxis are going through us at the moment. The radio stations, the TV stations, the air is totally polluted.
Yes.
We sit now within the electromagnetic field of the electrical wires which are in the wall.
Yes.
The water, I mean, you can fight it, but you can never win. What I'm saying is we departed from the grace of nature, and there's no way coming back.
Yes.
And I think wish to come back is a romantic view. I'm saying we need to see where we go from now. There's no way back. We are no longer in the Garden of Eden. Now, it doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to eat organic bread better than not organic bread, because I want things wholesome. It's my choice. But I do not have an ideology in me They tell, many people even do other things. They say if you want to spiritually develop and to be a spiritual person, you can't do it if you're full of medicine.
Okay.
You can't do it if your body is not clean. I don't see a connection between both. The body is fucked up.
Yes.
Now you can more or less keep the body the best possible, but not to have any illusions about it.
Yes. We are.
So
Yes.
the point is that my view about medicine is that I will take any medicine, anytime, and I don't have any problem with it. Because I think, for example, suffering pain is worse than actually putting chemicals in your body. Basically, we are born with a body which is well capable of taking care of the chemicals. Living with it, it adopted itself to the chemicals. And most of the chemicals are being washed down in our urine.
Yes.
Now, I am all for chemicals, except chemicals that change your state of mind and change your mood. Because this is interfering with your level of consciousness.
Okay, so psychiatric medicine.
Psychiatric medicine, as far as I'm concerned, is out. You see, tranquilizers from time to time, it's okay. But because having anxiety is much worse.
Yes.
But not with drugs which change the state of mind. And I think the SSRI, I think it's called, what there is in the Prozac,
Yes.
is changing the state of mind.
Yes.
And I'm against it. But other than that, I don't have any problem.
That's, I think, a very new approach. Well, if somebody is totally deranged and running around the street naked and is institutionalized and he can be kept under control, wouldn't you sedate him?
Yes, definitely, definitely. If a person, if a person is psychotic,
Yeah.
and it's out of his mind, well, there's no point to keep his level of consciousness.
Yes.
See, you keep the level of consciousness of a person if he's got a hope to do something with his consciousness,
Yeah.
which what most people don't.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, this is the most precious part in us, which has got a possibility of evolution and development. And I think it shouldn't be touched.
Yes.
But you see, there is this sentence of Jesus, let the dead bury the dead. The body, you know, it's the body. And we shouldn't make a temple out of it. You know, it's like a loyal, stupid servant. You should give it what it wants, what it needs, and let's get on and do what is important. I'm not for worshipping the body. The body is strong. The body is an ox. It can take vaccination, it can take drugs, can kick it from time to time, it's okay. You can run.
Yes.
It's an ox.
Would you apply also the not natural aspects of human life in our days to our consciousness? Is our consciousness...
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Did our consciousness state change because of technology, because of progress, scientific progress?
Well, I will put it differently. Scientific progress, technological progress, is actually a result of consciousness decline.
Okay.
So our consciousness is in a constant state of shrinkage and lack of operation. Now, the less consciousness we have, the more we are relying upon technology.
Oh.
So the fact that the human sits today 6 hours gazing at a TV screen, this is because he has no consciousness. So he needs to develop something in the absence of no consciousness. Because consciousness is a perceiving medium by which we perceive reality and the world and react to it. And if this organ is not developed or underdeveloped, you need the artifacts technology instead of it to fill the gap. So technology does not influence consciousness, but lack of consciousness develops technology.
I understand. It's very interesting equilibrium that...
Did we desert the subject of vaccination?
Yeah.
Did we? Do you think we... I'm not sure. Do you think we exhausted it?
Well,
I think we just touched it.
We touched it, but in the context of being natural, and the romantic view of being natural. But what I was thinking about while you were talking was all the approach of vaccination, to vaccinate yourself from things. The thought that not to overcome a disease, but to be vaccinated from it, so you can be harmed by it. Would you say it applies to other, well, as emotional pain? Can you vaccinate yourself from mental illness? Can it be expanded in conscious manner?
Yeah, I think vaccination is a concept, is a valid concept, and I think vaccination is very necessary when you talk about things which await for you later on, that you do not have the capacity to hold or to process or to deny or to combat, and they can do you harm. And I think it's important to have a weaker part of it before you meet it. I think this is the essence of all training.
Yes.
I mean, if you are in an army camp, they give you the training as a vaccination towards the war that you might go into.
That's a great analogy, I think.
And in the fifth way, I developed the architect,
Yes.
which means that before you go to any scene, before you go to work, before you go back to meet your wife, you need to be responsible to vision the worst happenings. Because if we come to it emotionally and not consciously, we want to vision the best things. Because we believe that if we believe, it will happen, which is stupid. But the wise man needs to vaccinate himself against the bad things which happen. And what happens is that if you do not vax yourself against what happened, you get into a shock. And if you get into a shock, what happens get into you and finishes you because you do not have any resistance.
Yeah.
So vaccination towards what might happen in the future is absolutely vital. The point is that most people, when they think about that bad things which happen, they collapse emotionally because they do not have the emotional power to think, to feel that something bad will happen without collapsing beforehand. So the person needs to be immune emotionally.
Yes.
And in other words, not to let the emotions interfere with the process of vaccination towards the future. So I think vaccination is absolutely important. I think a large part of raising children is vaccinating them against the bad which might happen. The problem is that we are so afraid from the bad, we deny it. And thus do not prepare ourselves towards it. And when it happens, we are totally unprepared and it finishes us.
Yes. Well, Sarah, when you were talking about emotional vaccination, if I may put it in, there are two aspects to it. One is to make the emotions more numb and thus feeling less pain.
I'm not sure the word I would put to it, numb.
Less sensitive.
No, you shouldn't make emotions less sensitive.
So you must be able to endure more emotional pain without collapsing.
Well, the emotions basically go to hysterics, have the tendency of going to hysterics whenever there is pain or something unpleasant. Now, the person needs to train his emotions to be able to withstand pain, frustration, difficulty without falling into pieces.
Yes.
So whenever the person feels that his emotions are going to go wild with pain, he needs to control it.
Yes.
He needs not to give it power. He needs not to identify with it. Now the emotions have got limited power.
Mm-hmm.
If you disconnect your attention from the emotions which are going wild, they could not go on with it for long.
Mm.
Basically, the power of the emotion is a borrowed power from our attention. But whenever there is pain, automatically we give our attention to it.
Okay.
The conscious person, the moment the emotions take pain and start to go wild with it, should disconnect from the emotions.
Yes.
Not to change it by mistake with repressing.
Yes.
Because if you repress, you give the power to the emotions and then you disconnect. If you give the power to the emotions, you disconnect, then you repress the emotion with them being wild into the subconscious and then they explode.
Wow.
You just don't feel it. The point is that the moment you feel your emotions starting to go wild, you disconnect. This is the most difficult moment to disconnect.
Yes.
And then the hysterics will die down. And after a while of training, the emotions would learn not to go wild, like a dog.
Yeah.
That learns after a while, when he feels like doing his urine in the apartment, to hold it.
So there is a crucial...
You need to train your emotions for a greater ability of self-restraint.
Yeah.
But what does this have to do with vaccination?
Can you vaccinate yourself from... well, do you need to vaccinate...
From going wild emotionally?
Yes.
Yes, by doing an architect. See, if you know that it's going to be painful, then much of the pain is already in your knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes, it's lesser, because you already took the pain into your consciousness. The consciousness have got no problem experiencing pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's the emotions that can't experience pain or difficulty.
Okay.
Now, if you do an architect, you transfer from ahead the pain into the consciousness, which can hold it, and you leave little to the emotions.
Yeah, I was thinking, would you say that the contradiction between what you want to happen and what really happens is what makes the emotional pain or makes the emotional impact the strongest? And
well, you don't want the pain to happen, so you tell yourself that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And when it happens, you get into a shock because you denied it. Then all your attention goes there, and it goes stronger. You identify, you get swallowed in it.
Yeah.
And you disappear.
Okay.
And again, I would say that if we talk about vaccination, then I think a self-responsible person needs to do all the time an architect about what might happen without being involved in what happened. Just neutrally saying, this can go wrong here, here, and here. If you've got it printed already in you, you are vaccinated against the disease of what this situation might cause in you.
So you're saying a very important point, maybe you can miss it while listening to you, is that not only you need to have an architect, but you don't need to get emotionally involved with the architect that you're making. Because if you are going to a situation and you had an emotional architect, it actually goes worse.
Well, actually what happens, you're right, what happens is the emotions are taking the scene and they are thinking about what might happen and they immediately go into hysterics.
Yeah.
Because of that, the consciousness is not active at all in forecasting what might happen.
Yeah.
So the emotions are very active and the consciousness is very dormant. What self-training consciously should happen is the contrary. The emotions should be shrinked in terms of their dominance. And conscious person who should not allow the emotions to expand above 30% of activity. Whenever he feels heat, whenever he feels excited, whenever he feels it's rising, he should think about something else. Or he should imagine something heavy pressing the emotions down into a small core. A self-training Now, if the emotions getting smaller, this allows the consciousness to be bigger. And if you experience an architect, and at the same time you're not allowing your emotions to grow, then your consciousness takes the territory that your emotions took from before. It was a swamp with the emotions, and now your consciousness could grow into it what you want to grow.
That's, I think not many people know that there is a territorial battle between emotions and consciousness. And
on the contrary, I think many people think that the problem is that we do not give our emotions enough freedom.
yes.
And you're not expressing emotions. And they mistake self-repression of the emotions to training the emotions. It could look the same, but there's nothing more different than that. Because if you repress the emotions, you repress them with going wild. You are just not aware of it.
Okay.
What I'm talking about is not repressing, but not allowing it a total freedom to go wild when they are free, without repression. You see, in other words, do not deny, but train. Repression does not train, but denies the fact that it happens. But first of all, you identify.
Yeah.
The identification is so quick. And then a system in you says, oh no, I shouldn't let it. It's bad, it's terrible. And you repress it. And then you grow demons.
Yeah. Well, I think it's well, the most important part in what you said is keeping it in 30%, not to get lost in it and not to...
It's actually very, very difficult, and of course it should be said that doing it alone, just by this instruction, is impossible.
Yeah.
And you need a trainer. You need a person who is who can read the trainee and see when he's deceiving himself, because there's a lot of self-deception in it to begin with, and he should be quite tough putting the borders. And in a way, as far as the emotions are concerned, training the emotions to be 30% and to obey to orders which coming from the consciousness is very much like dog training.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone just will go to really master in dog training, like Caesar from who's the dog whisperer. There is a TV series. He's a master, and just in no time the dogs obey. And basically dogs is a wonderful, wonderful thing, great friend, but could be a terrible mess and really pain in the ass if you do not train him.
Yeah.
Same with the emotions. And I think many people would object to that. But I need to explain, I do not talk about repression. You know, in The Little Prince, there is a sentence that the fox says to the Little Prince. You know the Little Prince?
I didn't, but...
He says, I want to be your friend, but first of all you need to train me. And I think we have a wrong perception of training as something dominant, overbearing, ruling.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, basically what the gardener does is training the garden.
Yeah.
So the garden would grow. And people take being natural as a permission for chaos. You know, you have this expression, go with it, let it be free, take it easy, go with the flow. All this is bullshit sayings.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't go with the flow, you should do self-training. Then let the flow take you, not you go with the flow. Take the flow, take you after you are ordered. But most people are not ordered inside at all.
Yes. They're chaotic and...
Our inner life is chaotic, and our inner life needs to be ordered. But ordering inner life does not kill the inner life, but gives it a chance to grow.
Yes, I think this is the most important...
Because growth and chaos do not go together.
Yes.
If we look at our heart and lungs, everything is ordered. it's ordered, and there is life.
Yes.
The first thing that happens when a person dies, there's a chaos in the body.
Yes.
So we live with internal chaos.
Would you say that chaos
And
is
society actually gives rules and regulations, not allowing the chaos of one to interfere with the chaos of another.
Okay. So you're actually saying that chaos is a dying process of things.
Let's say that chaos is the antithesis of growth.
Okay.
Whenever there is growth, there is formation. There is inner order. You look at nature and say, well, where is order there? There's great order there.
Yeah.
Just it's not our cubical, geometrical, linear order. But there is order.
Yes.
Any order is better than disorder. Especially if it's internal order.
Yeah.
External order is dominance and dictatorship. So the question could be, what do you prefer? Lack of external order or internal chaos? Sorry, external order or internal chaos?
Yes.
It's a difficult question. Both are not good. And apparently both are going very well together.
Yes.
And if internal dominance goes with internal chaos, then internal order goes with external freedom.
Yes. So this is about setting yourself free.
You need to work on yourself in order to set yourself free. But first of all, you need to overcome the objection of your emotions and the indoctrination of society which is being put into you. Because the indoctrination of society is built as such as to maintain internal chaos,
Yeah.
but surrendering to external dominance, which is very hidden, very, it's not clear at all that as such, but everyone is obeying to external, very strict order.
So if I understand you, you actually can be natural in two ways. You can be natural by going with the flow, as you say, and you can be natural out of setting yourself free from the dominance of the outer world.
And especially by putting order in what's happening in you.
Yes.
You see, the order is more on the lower systems of the emotions and the desires. This should be ordered just like ordering a dog, by conditioning,
Yeah.
by working with the carrot and the stick.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you condition. And that's how we should be with our emotions and our desires. This will free our mind, because our mind and our thinking is totally controlled by the chaos of our emotions and desires. We can't think because we're all the time flooded by gushes of emotions. So our thinking is wet.
Yes.
The moment you start to train your emotions, you get a mental ability and agility.
Yes.
And then the next step is developing the mind, developing consciousness. And architect, for example, is one of the things that the mind can do. It can project itself.
Yes.
The thoughts can't project themselves, the mind can.
It's very interesting.
The thoughts are cars, the mind is an aeroplane.
Yes.
Our thoughts could be aeroplanes.
Something very interesting from this conversation that arises is that chaos goes with optimism, and, and pessimism goes with inner order.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. I think pessimism emotionally is terrible, might lead to depression. Pessimism consciously is absolutely essential.
Okay.
Because this is reality. In reality, you should be pessimistic and prepare for the worst. This is how you survive.
Yes.
I think optimism for the emotions is great. optimism for the mind is terrible.
Okay.
Why I'm saying that? The emotions need different materials than the mind, opposite. The emotions need optimism, love, hope, empathy, and positive dynamic with people around us. This is what it needs.
Yes.
After it's trained not to take over your empire.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are not good for the mind. The mind should not be optimistic and positive dynamic. It's a hard fighter in the service of truth.
Yes.
And there should be a coexistence between the two levels of the mind and the emotions. The mind is the king.
Yes.
The emotions should be the obedient servant. And if it does what it should, then it gets what it wants. Some love, some warmth, some friendship, some positive dynamics.
Yeah.
Be happy.
You're putting here your thesis says to live with two very opposite.
Not opposite. Yeah, okay, opposite.
On one hand, the fighter and the pessimism. On the other, give warmth and accept and positive dynamics and everything. And one might ask himself, listening to it, how do I put these two things together without
One
collapsing?
above the other.
One above the other.
You know, but with it I would say something else to put things right. Often, sometimes, I don't know, I'm asked, what do I prefer if things are in extreme? Full-blown consciousness and poor communication, positive dynamics and human and emotional warmth, or emotional warmth, positive dynamics in other people, empathy and no consciousness? My surprising answer would be the second. This is not new to you, yes?
Yes, for me.
But I'm saying it for this. I definitely would choose human warmth, empathy with no consciousness. My explanation would be the emotional existence is absolute necessity to be able to bear this difficult life.
Yes.
Consciousness development is an extra, a necessary extra, an essential extra, but it's an extra.
Mm-hmm.
I think not everyone should or could do consciousness development.
Mm-hmm.
It's an option, an essential option.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's difficult to perceive how come an option is essential.
Yes.
But this is maybe at different times. I can explain it. But it's extra essential. But the minimum necessary. It's like the pyramid of Maslow.
Yes.
You can have self-fulfillment as the fifth stage.
Yes.
But first of all, you should have the third stage, which is love and affection and warmth with other people. And I would prefer the base
Mm-hmm.
if I have the option between both.
Yes.
And it's impossible to have consciousness life without having warmth, positive dynamics, real friendship, love, and all the rest of it. The world simply becomes too cold and your emotions won't survive.
Yes.
See, it's like, I would put here the emotions as a parallel to water and the consciousness as the power of the sun.
Okay.
You see, the flower can't grow without the sun, but it can survive only on water.
Yes.
But if you have only sun and no water, the flower will shrink.
So there's actually this is it begins to show.
It's very strange, this conversation, because it's going very strange kind of turns.
Yes.
Because in a moment ago, it seems that I'm doing to the emotions go.
Yeah. This is a very holistic conversation, I think.
Well, it's a nice way to put it. Erratic conversation, I would say.
I think that what arises from it is maybe an ethical or conscious matzpun question.
Ethical and conscience is two different things. What is conscience is not necessarily ethical, and what is ethical is not necessarily conscience.
Okay, yes, but when you say that you would rather have the third stage of Maslow's pyramid instead of the fifth, which is
if I have the option to choose between both, yeah.
Between both, it may sound like a conscience decision.
Would it?
Well, to me, it sounds somewhat conscience.
Okay.
That it is maybe something behind it says that it is good to be human and with warm feelings, and it less good to be.
I didn't say less good.
Yeah.
I talked about priorities.
Yes.
I would rather have emotional warmth and positive dynamics without consciousness than having consciousness without emotional warmth, because then you become a Nazi.
Yeah. And this is this is something that has to do with goodness and badness in the...
Goodness and badness?
Yes. Really.
That's what you mean by morality, but I'm not following you how good and badness goes into it.
Well, I would ask you, what is the base of your
approach?
Your approach that says that on what level? What
Why
scale?
am I saying what I'm saying?
Yes.
Why are you asking?
Because I also feel so in this way, but I have difficulty explaining it to myself.
Well, I can come to it in various ways, I suppose. One way I can come to it is that there are two centers of gravity in the human. Both of them are not active.
Okay.
In most people. One is the soul, and the other is the mind when it's developed, consciousness.
Yes.
And the soul is the feminine aspect, Shakti, and consciousness is the male aspect, Shiva. Mostly the soul is staying in a shrinked stage, very contracted at the base of the spine, and part of its lack of ability to have freedom and space is because of the wild, crude stage of our desires and of our emotions, which actually do not let it possibility of coming out, because the emotions and the desires are crude and the soul is very fine. Now, the soul is alive, but it's prison. The consciousness is non-active, not developed, is in a dormant stage. Now, each of these beings which are in us, which need to meet, has its own needs, its own wishes. For example, the consciousness loves truth, loves wisdom, has the ability to create and manufacture wisdom, and to search for truth. The soul loves companionship, dialogue, humanity, human warmth. These are all attributes of the soul. And when the emotions are quiet and calm, then the real qualities of being a human can come out. So when you ask me this question, where I'm coming from when I'm saying that I prefer number 3 in the pyramid of Maslow to number 5, it's coming from this that the soul is prior to the consciousness. We are soul beings with the possibility of consciousness.
Okay.
And you can't get to the consciousness if you do not have free soul.
So you're actually saying that you can't do the fifth without the third.
You can't do, that's what Maslow is saying.
Yes.
By the way, Maslow is a very, very interesting person. I mean, he instigated the term peak experience. And he's actually talking about human beings that experience high level of consciousness.
Yes.
And I think that he designed his pyramid according to those human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, when we think about all these seekers after truth today, which are going to Nepal and India, and all these places and doing a lot of work on themselves by yoga and meditations, and there's a lot of people who delude themselves, but a lot of people who do serious work. What I'm saying is that the worst thing happens to them is when they succeed to awake their consciousness without actually ordering their emotions and their psychology. For them it would be terrible. And if you become a leader of people with partially awakened consciousness and with the emotions wired, poor your students.
Would you say that climbing the pyramid Maslow is going through vaccinating yourself and being able to withstand the next level?
Explain a little bit your question.
How do you grow if not by vaccinate? If you say that you do it by training, and training is a sort of vaccination.
Wait a minute. Training is training, and vaccination is vaccination.
Okay.
Training your emotions to be calm and restrained and not to go wild, it's a training. But you actually, vaccinating is when your mind is going ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's preparing itself for the emotions not to be in a shock.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say that it's a training of the mind, the architect, and it's also not training of the emotions. It's actually teaching the consciousness to work mechanically before it is awakened. So you see, awakened consciousness, this is what it should do as a habit of living. But there's many things a person could do if he learns it from a teacher to train mechanically his consciousness to do, to avoid him getting into great trouble, like emotional collapse.
Yes.
But this is not an attribute this is only attribute of fully developed consciousness. But you can learn to do it mechanically to avoid problems. So it's not a training.
So you need to build...
It's not a training, it's a safe mechanism device. It's actually reduced to make less problems.
So
it's caused to... Yes, sorry.
You need to build the ground for the consciousness to facilitate.
That's not what I'm saying. You're saying that the vaccination is building a ground for the consciousness?
Yes.
No, it's not what I'm saying at all.
Oh.
I'm saying the vaccination process is designed not to allow the emotions to collapse by disease, which it doesn't have the power. We get into emotional traumas.
Yes.
The architect should minimize the emotional traumas, because it's a trauma because we're not prepared. That's all. It's to do to what we talked about is vaccination.
Yes.
What is vaccination against? Disease. What is disease? Emotional trauma.
Okay. This now I understand.
That's all.
Yes.
That's all. Now, if you do an architect, you wouldn't develop your consciousness.
Yeah.
The architect is one of the mechanisms of fully dynamically evolved consciousness.
Yes.
But you can learn to do it mechanically.
So there are a lot of consciousness things that you can do either dynamically, if you're already awakened,
Or manually.
or manually. And
An architect is a manual operation of consciousness.
okay.
All active consciousness should be forecasting itself forwards and backwards at the same time. I would eliminate the word should. All fully developed active consciousness is living at 3 levels of time constantly, projecting itself forward, projecting itself backwards, and having wide range of coverage of the present.
You're actually saying that the consciousness lives in a timeless world.
No, I wouldn't say it's living in timeless world. On the contrary, it's very, very aware of time, consciousness. Absolutely. As much as it's fully aware of space.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 dimensions of time is ahead, backwards, and now. And the consciousness has got the ability to be in the 3 dimensions at once.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Not timeless.
Okay. Well, we discussed about going forward in time. We didn't discuss about going backwards in time. And why should a conscious person, or what has the consciousness to search for in the past?
Well, you see, the past is alive now. What it means that in you there is now Danny 9 years old.
Okay.
And it's alive, it's fully alive. Part of Danny 9 years old died, but parts are alive because they're being nourished. I'm not talking about nourishing the past, because this is going there emotionally. I'm talking about saving the past and bringing it to the future. Now, I think Danny of now should be communicating all the time, if his consciousness is developed, with Danny of 9. And actually updating himself with Danny of now. So the Danny of 9 can have the benefit of the Danny of now, and it can grow. So the person should all the time be in dialogue with his past, upgrading it and bringing it to nourish the future. This is partly what it's meant by being connected to your inner child.
Okay. What happens to a person? This is something that is interesting, I think, maybe in a personal level, but what happens to a person if he denies his past? He's unable to grow?
First of all, I want to say that this is terrible and happens. I think most people deny their past as much as they deny the subconsciousness.
Yes.
And most people believe that their pasts hold monsters in it. We are all sort of trained to believe that what is worst is behind us, and this is what is actually not allowing us to develop if we surrender to it. And the best thing you can do is cut yourself from the past.
Yes.
And go to the future. But a person without a past doesn't have himself. I think our true identity is in what we wear. What we are is in what we wear. Our true essence is in the young us, because life moves us away from being true to ourselves.
Yes.
And anything, the essence of anything, lives in the origin of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you are connected with your origin, the more you are connected to you. And what I'm saying is that if your life is a kind of a line going through time, you should all the time, we should be living on that line, unifying all the aspects on that line, and bringing all the aspects backwards and forwards to make it one dynamic.
That's. I would say that on a personal level, it fears, because a lot of
fear. You got fear?
I think I'm experiencing.
Because what you're thinking that you've got in your past monsters.
Yes.
Most people deserve their past, and this is terrible. Because in your past you have these beings which saying, "Oh, don't desert me. I need you. You gave me life.
Yes.
Come on, hold me, hug me." See, I've got in one of my books a beautiful poem, not that I wrote, which I want to translate right now because it's very appropriate. Can you see my book, Masala Yeshut Apnimit, anywhere? למעלה, למעלה, דני. מעל הצהוב. למעלה. תעלה על השפה. It's a beautiful poem by an Israeli poet called Aaron Shabtai. And he's actually talking about the process of going backwards and saving the past you, the child you. Okay. Okay. I will do an instant translation. It's called "The Me Will Not See the Gold in the Future," the golden future. The me will not see the golden future unless it goes back on its footsteps to the darkness, would lean on its corpse who is lying in his past, and will disconnect from himself the reins of remorse. Not the reins of remorse, the something which holds you like a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
For that, it will wear the form of he as working clothes, and will take a toolkit, tools of the heart, and will give life to the frightened kid who is looking in its image in the mirror in a stare which is not insulting. He will say to him, "Get up, who was me. Go to make your life bad without feeling ashamed. Be stupid and arrogant and fall and make mistakes, but only in the palm of your hand I will find my food. Only if I forgive you, I will be whole. Look, I break the whip. I do not beat you."
You're actually saying,
Do you understand?
be friends, yes, and I know the point.
Well, I know the point as well, but it's still...
The context is now...
Yes, it's actually going with the context.
Yes. You're actually saying that to forgive yourself and not to feel remorse.
Yeah, but in relation to what we said before, you asked me about time, which is a subject that I know fascinates you.
Yes.
And I started to work today on the article about it.
This is also a sort of vaccination, maybe you may say. Go back and to vaccinate yourself, maybe?
Well, you can't vaccinate yourself against what happened.
Yeah.
You can only vaccinate yourself against what might happen.
Yeah.
And you can save the misfortunes that happened by accepting it, by not judging it. Being a mother upon the old you, this is what it's talked about. But I feel that we're going to
Yes.
too many directions.
Yes, I also feel that in some way...
In a way, the vaccination is there,
Yes.
but we're doing a very wide range dance around it, and many things are coming in. So I suggest we do a break,
Yes.
and then we will come with another subject. So.
Okay.